Hello and a good day. This video is going to show you a little bit about what we are trying to study in. Hello kids, this is Coach Anderson. I hope you are having a good day. I'm going to use this video to explain a little bit about what we are studying in this unit, and then also, of course, to explain what your task is for today, which is November 5th. So to recap, yesterday the objective was to learn a little bit about the Earth's layers. We did talk about this a bit in class, and the idea is that below your feet, we are actually on the outer layer of the Earth, the crust, and below our feet, there's a long way, thousands of miles down, deep, 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 all the way to get to the center of the Earth. And when you go deeper into the Earth, the properties of the materials change. The temperatures change. Some parts are kind of liquidy, some parts are liquidy, some parts are solid. And yesterday's goal was to understand a lot of the vocabulary. That's why you did a crossword puzzle and then you did the Ed puzzle, so that you just understand the basic idea of what our Earth layers are all about. And we'll get more into that as we go on. But in a nutshell, you kind of made this thing on your Google Slides last week, but when you open up Earth, this is essentially what it looks like below your feet. We live on the crust, and so it's kind of nice. These folks would live in Africa, or people would live in Saudi Arabia or India, but below their feet, and not very far down, is a crazy, crazy environment. The crust itself is very thin, maybe 50 or 100 miles thick, which sounds like a long way, but when you're considering 6,000 miles to get to the middle of the Earth, it's not very far. And just below the crust is an area called the mantle, and this is the area that has the convection currents that take the less dense, very hot rock, and that moves up, 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 up towards the crust, and then it kind of cools down and then moves back down over the course of millions and millions of years. Inside of the Earth farther is the outer core, which is a liquidy layer, extremely, extremely hot. And then you have the inner core, which is the center of the Earth, which is actually a solid because it's so dense and it is super hot, but the density of it and the pressure from everything above it makes it into a solid. And these are like nickel and iron, and both of these layers are made of nickel and iron. So when you get to the mantle, though, this is where all the action occurs, and the movement in the mantle, the convection currents in the mantle, are the reason why we have continents like we have them. And then, of course, on the continents, we have mountains and valleys and different things, and we have oceans and basically all the landforms. All the landforms, essentially on Earth, are formed because of movement in the mantle. So today's objective is to understand what happens on the crust when the mantle moves. How does that relationship work? So we're going to talk about something called plate tectonics, or in other words, tectonic plates. So today's goal is basically an intro lesson into the tectonic plates on Earth. And before we get to the lesson objectives, I'm going to show you a little bit more specifically what I mean without showing the actual tectonic plates. And some of you guys have probably heard of these before because it is definitely something that elementary school teachers will talk about. But when you look at the Earth, you notice we've got the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, North America, South America, Antarctica. Then, of course, we have Australia, New Zealand, and this is all of Asia. This is India down here. And then, of course, you have Africa and Europe. And there's a lot of landforms all over the Earth. For example, the Himalaya mountains are extremely high mountains, all the way to the highest mountain in the entire world, which is Mount Everest right here. And all these landforms are here not because they just happen to be here, but they're here because things that happen below the Earth's crust move areas of Earth around, sometimes causing pieces of land to bump into one another, sometimes causing pieces of land to move away from each other, and in the end, we end up with the landforms we have. So, for example, India, sometimes we call this a subcontinent. This actually was attached down here to parts of southern Africa, and over millions of years, it moved up as the mantle moved and kind of pushed it along the surface, and India collided with what is Asia, and then uplifted this area here and created what we now know as the Himalaya Mountains. Another interesting feature on Earth that's really easy to see is the center of the Atlantic Ocean. It's pretty easy to see the crack that literally lies along the entire center of the entire Atlantic Ocean, all the way north, all the way through basically the center of Iceland, and then kind of petering out up here towards the North Pole. This is where two tectonic plates are moving away from each other. So you have the South American plate here moving this way, and then you have the African plate here moving this way. And what's happening is the Atlantic Ocean is getting wider and wider. A long time ago, and it's kind of easy to see actually, this part of South America was nestled right in here to this part of Africa. That's like millions and millions and millions of years ago. And over a long period of time, very, very slowly, the Atlantic Ocean has been spreading because convection currents in the mantle are pushing this part, the South American plate, to the left, and this part, or maybe to the west, and this part, the African plate, is being moved to the east. And of course, everything's bumping into each other because you've got India over here. You've got another plate up here, which caused these mountains here to form. So all of the different plates of the Earth, the cracks in the Earth's crust, are moving around, creating all of these landforms. Now, here's what you're going to do today to introduce yourself to what tectonic plates are, and more specifically, where the tectonic plates are. On the science site that you're linking to, you're going to click up on November 5th Interactive Earth. That's where you're going to click. So we'll click on that. And that's going to open up this page here. It's got a bunch of things. The one we're going to concentrate on right now is the tectonic plates one right here in the middle. So we'll click on that. That's going to open up this Earth. And I'm just going to click Got It. And I'm also going to unclick Earth rotation. That's really important because otherwise the Earth is going to spin, which is kind of cool. But we want to be able to move the Earth on our own. So I'll unclick that. And this gives us a really neat 3D view of what the world looks like as it's broken up into the pieces, the crust pieces, the tectonic plates that make up our Earth. And all of these plates move in different ways because of movement in the mantle, and that movement creates different landforms. So it's really important that we understand the names of these plates and their locations so that when we talk about them, we have an understanding of where these places are and why it's important. So we've got South American plate, Nazca plate, North American plate. You may notice that these plates are very often named for where they are, which is kind of handy. The Pacific plate, the Indo-Australian plate, sometimes just called the Australian plate. The Indian plate is here. The Eurasian plate is up here. So you get the idea. The Antarctic plate's down there. So you're going to use this model to complete the pear deck that you're going to have access to. So here's how, also here's where the instructions are for what you're going to put on the pear deck. If you scroll down a little bit, it says click for instructions. If I click on that, it's going to open up some lists. So these are the things you're going to put on your pear deck. You're just going to label the pear deck slide with the following plates. And I want you to use the little text tool so they're legible, easy to read. Okay, you're going to label all of these plates. And then you're going to use the highlight tool to actually color the plates. And these are the colors that I want you to make sure that you color each one of these plates. So this is basically all that you're going to be doing today, but it's important that you take your time and do it correctly. Now I'm going to show you an example of how you're going to do this on the pear deck so that you do it correctly. So on the pear deck, looks like this. You're going to label the plates, and so I'm going to use my little text tool. Just click right here, and I'm going to type North American. And you don't really have to put the word plate because they're all plates, and so you can just leave it like that without putting the word plate. And notice how I went ahead and I hit enter after North to make it fit here. So you don't necessarily have to do that. For example, up here you don't. But this one here, you probably want to make sure that the words fit correctly into the little box when you fill out this one here. So you're going to label all the plates using the text tool. Pretty simple. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to color them using the highlight tool right here. And this is really important that we do this correctly. So follow along here and make sure that you understand how to do this right. First thing we want to do, of course, is figure out the color. So North American plate, we're going to make that yellow. Okay. So go back here. And there's a couple different yellows. I really don't mind which one you use. However, some of these say light purple or light blue or dark blue. Make sure you use the right one. But there are several yellows, and I don't think it really matters which one. But I'll go with the lightest yellow. So this is clicking on this. I've clicked on, click on highlighter, and click on yellow. There we go. And notice when I go over here, this thickness of this line, this is very important. Now I'm going to stop drawing on that. And if you need to change the thickness of the line, you go to the sizer. If I click on that, I can make it much thicker. However, it's kind of hard to do accuracy with it that thick. I can also make it much thinner, but it's also then hard to color a lot if you do it that way. So you want to get a thickness that's just right. Now, let me show you something that's also very important. I need this to look good. I need this to look like you took some time, did it carefully. So one thing that may cause a problem, let's put it to about this size right here. So if I'm going to color this plate, and so I start going along the lines here, going along, and then I stop coloring. Okay, so I stop coloring. Well, I can start coloring again, but watch what happens. When I overlap this, I make this darker, and notice how you can see where the overlap is. If I stop coloring again, I end up with another overlap. So it's not a continuous color. So it's really, really important that when you do the coloring, that you take your time and you figure out where the plate is. This is a North American plate, and you just basically color it all at one time. So I've got my little clicker clicked down, and I'm coloring this entire thing all at the same time, taking my time to do it. And that way, there really is no overlap. You can't really see an overlap because I haven't let up on my clicker. It's all basically going to be one uniform color. And lightly underneath this, I can see the North American continent, little gray area. There we go. And now I can let go. So it's really important that you do that. Now you're going to have some overlap when you color the different plates. When I color, for example, the Eurasian plate, I'll have overlap here on the edges. That's fine. I just want to make sure there's no overlap within the color, that it looks nice. And then, of course, I can label it as well. I can label it after I color it or before. It doesn't really matter. Oops, I want to make sure that my label color is correct. And label it North American plate. Like that. So that's what you're going to do. You need to make sure the slide looks good. It's going to take a little bit of time, possibly, looking at the lists to make sure you understand what you're doing, and then finding these lists on this Earth. One of the challenges is that this is a 3D globe, and this is a 2D map. And I did this on purpose because we need to have the skill of looking at a 2D map and understanding that's North America, that's North America, that's South America, and that's South America. Africa's over here. And on a 2D map, it's right here. Above Africa is Europe and Asia, and then Australia is down here, which would translate to down here. This is challenging for some of y'all, but it's an important skill to have. So that's why we're using this 3D globe instead of just a 2D map to copy from. So that is the task for today. This is due today, so make sure that you work carefully and you work diligently to get it done. Good luck.